Welcome, everybody, to our April community event here, where we are focusing on our topic of fertility and hormones, and specifically how they relate to stress. And so obviously today we're going to be talking about that and how the Naturally Connected Life program specifically addresses the underlying cause of the hormonal imbalance that's triggered by stress. And that doesn't just mean, that we're worried about paying the bills or, whatever else is going on externally. This is also directly addressing the internal causes of stress, the things that we might be unwittingly doing because somebody else said that these were healthy things to do, like dieting, that actually also increase our stress hormones. So everybody wants, fast results, especially when it comes to their health. Then they're probably wondering, oh, okay, so why am I spending all this time, decluttering my closet or, meditating? What does that have to do with my physical symptoms? Well, it may seem like this has nothing to do with it, but like I was saying, this is all in alignment with creating a lifestyle that reduces cortisol, reduces stress, and the other hormones that are triggered by that increase. So we have this directly deals with estrogen issues because cortisol is made from progesterone. And so progesterone is depleted when we're under stress and estrogen runs rampant. And then we're going to talk about how that affects our bodies biochemically. So how it affects our metabolism and our cellular respiration. And we're going to talk about some simple things that we can do to address that, things that are part of the program, and some things that people could just be doing even if they weren't part of this program. So, great. Welcome, everybody. And I'll introduce myself. I'm Eric. And I'm one of the co-founders with my wife, Rachel, of Naturally Connected Life. And we have set out to create a stress-free solution to our own health challenges. So this includes, Rachel is currently pregnant, and I am a male in my middle age, and we have a toddler. And a big part of our challenge was to figure out how could we be eating that would be appropriate for all three of us, and with the new one on the way, when they start eating, what would that diet look like? Because for many, many years, I bounced around from one extreme to another, doing detoxes and cleanses. It was raw vegan, doing juicing, water fasting, intermittent fasting, keto, carnivore, all of those extremes that were not appropriate for all stages of development. They would not support healthy pregnancy. They would not support a growing child. And the reality is that they weren't supporting my health either. They were all increasing my physiological stress. And you can see that today because I'm still lacking hair. Working on that. That's definitely something that's we're hoping to improve in the future, but at least it stopped falling out. And that's exactly what a lot of our clients are experiencing as well. Hair loss is stopping. Other signs of stress have stopped. And what can be reversed, what can heal, does heal. And so then I'll pass it over to you, Rachel, if you want to tell a little bit about yourself.
Hi, I'm Rachel. I am 33 weeks pregnant, so very pregnant. And yes, hormones. I think about hormones a lot, actually, at this point. But I've had a roller coaster of hormonal issues that I've dealt with like throughout my life. My first pregnancy, I dealt with a very large fibroid, and like, am I estrogen dominant, or is my body metabolizing estrogen? All of the things that you have to deal with when you're thinking about hormones. And
Sorry, I was muting everybody else. I didn't
It's
think it
okay.
would include you.
So yes, so yeah, lots of hormone issues, and luckily, since this pregnancy has been significantly easier, and I think that there's been a significant like reduction in my stress level. I've done a whole lot of things besides the diet to also help reduce the stress levels. And because of that, my fibroid is actually not large. It's not gone, but it's not large. It's very small this time. So we're thrilled with that. And that's, progress. That's a huge progress. So it's really been a emotional hormonal roller coaster. So we're here to support you. We understand. We know exactly what you're dealing with in that regard. So back over to you with the hormone issues, the hormone stuff.
So a big part of my process was having a wife who had a fibroid that was so large, it was competing for space with our first son, Milo, in the womb. And at the time when we had to do a C-section, because it prevented him from turning, the nurses and the staff in the ER were like blown away. It was just enormous, and I actually got to see what it looked like when it was removed. It was gigantic. If anybody does want to see that picture, you can hit me up privately, because it is pretty impressive. And so the doctor said, "Oh, you would be insane to try to get pregnant again without having that removed first." And so here we are 4 years later, that everything that we have discovered and implemented to help Rachel with her hormones, and that fibroid has, according to the doctors, miraculously not enlarged this entire pregnancy. Whereas it was, Rachel actually looked pregnant after the first, like within 6 weeks of us finding out she was pregnant, because the fibroid had swollen up so much. And why do I bring this up? Because it all comes back to estrogen and stress. So the reality is that estrogen is a stress hormone. Okay. It was like more like a melon than a grapefruit.
Yeah, it was 13 centimeters.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was really big. Yeah.
Yeah, it was bigger than Milo's head.
Yeah, it was the size of a second child.
So, and that was, fibroids are brought on by estrogen and stress. Okay. And they have a very fundamental relationship on how our body can respirate. So it has to do with oxygen and carbon dioxide and carboxylates, and maintaining the appropriate pH of the tissues in the body. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. Okay, so what we have to first understand is that fibroids and PCOS and all of these hormonal issues, including for men, impotency and belly fat, all come back to this relationship with estrogen and cortisol, and whether or not the cells are effectively respirating. So cortisol and insulin resistance go hand in hand. And when we're under stress, like I was saying, progesterone is used to make cortisol. So when we're under stress, the body's natural defense against estrogen, that balances out estrogen and its effects, is progesterone, and that gets depleted. So we have to basically start over and say, all right, how are we going to, one, get these cortisol levels down so that we stop converting all of our progesterone over into cortisol? And then that will improve our cellular respiration, which improves our thyroid function, so that our bodies can start releasing the stored estrogen, because that's exactly what happens when we're under this physiological stress. So estrogen in the human body is used to not only for stress, but also as a growth hormone. So in the female reproductive cycle, it triggers the thickening of the uterine lining and the development of the egg follicle. All right, and so then that would be balanced by progesterone under low stress conditions and with adequate nutrition. But what happens is if this gets all out of balance, then we start to see these symptoms. And so for women, that is most commonly PMS, where normally the estrogen should be dropping. And when it's not, it's staying elevated, and then progesterone doesn't work as effectively. And we need progesterone to support healthy digestion and healing and mood and all these other sort of things that go out of whack, what we commonly associate with PMS symptoms. So what's important to understand is that what is considered normal is not the healthy ideal function. So we have to get away from the idea that just because that's what we've experienced our whole lives, or that's what everyone experiences their whole lives, is as normal, does not mean that it's healthy. So for women, this can be, irregular menstruation, tenderness in the breasts, PMS, bloating, constipation, anxiety, mood swings, and headaches and migraines, as well as infertility and reproductive issues like we talked about, fibroids, PCOS, endometriosis. It also leads to body fat and is indicated in cancer and in brain aging. And so this also applies to women who have stopped menstruating, right? So postmenopausal women, a big part of that is that the tissues have become so saturated in estrogen, and the body is not able to produce the progesterone to balance that the body just stops producing estrogen. Doesn't mean there's no estrogen in the body. It's just not producing anymore. And the estrogen is still trapped in the tissues, and that is the body fat, okay? Now, this does affect men too, and I can definitely speak to that in my own personal experience. Somebody who was unable to maintain muscle mass, had very easily broken bones and weak teeth, a lot of skin problems, and issues with brain fog and chronic fatigue. And interestingly, estrogen also plays a very important role in regulating cholesterol. So this is very important for men, even though we don't normally associate estrogen with men. It is also very important and is important in balancing testosterone. So oftentimes what we see is, and I've seen this with some men, is that they say, "Oh, well, I got tested. My testosterone was off the chart." Well, did they ever look at your estrogen levels? And they said, "Oh, no." And when they go back and check that, they see their estrogen was also off the charts. So it becomes like this arms race where estrogen is increasing, testosterone is increasing, and eventually testosterone is going to lose out. So in men, like I was saying, same sort of things we see. We see belly fat, fatigue, depression, the man boobs, sexual dysfunction. And because this has a very close relationship with insulin resistance, we also see a prevalence of type 2 diabetes with estrogen accumulation in men. So this all comes back to reducing stress. If we can reduce cortisol, then our happy, healthy, reproducing hormones, progesterone, testosterone, etc., come back into balance. And then our body's finally able to catch up with the snowballing effects of more and more cortisol, more and more estrogen. So that's my little spiel there. I'll pass this on to Rachel.
So, in talking about stress, what are some of the things that stress you out? Who wants to spill? What stresses you out?
Children, work, those things. Working from home with children.
Yep. Anyone else want to share what's stressing them out?
And for me,
I think she pretty much covered everything.
Yeah. Time management. I run 2 businesses. I have a kid. I have a husband. I'm a teacher's assistant for this other online course, like a million other things. And attending to everything taking care of each thing well is something I'm working on, but it definitely stresses me out, especially when mistakes are made because of that, and then turns into a snowball effect. So, yeah, I think it sums up to time management for me. It's a little stressful.
Yeah, totally understand that one. Do a lot of jobs and have a child and all of that. Gotcha. Anyone else wanted to share? So, what are we doing to help alleviate our stress is my next question. Do we have practices? Do we have things that are our go-to things that we're actually doing and following through with, and not just saying, oh, I really like meditating. Meditating's great. But are we actually doing them is the question. So stress wise, what are you doing? What like actively do you do to help reduce your stress? Anyone? No one's reducing their stress.
I'm meditating every day. I got into the habit, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 months ago, and I really have found that it's made a difference. And I'm also finding, like, at night, if I'm too wound up, but I really need to go to sleep, that I just do but laying down in bed, I just do the meditation breathing, and it helps me to relax and fall asleep. And I found that's been really beneficial.
Amazing. I'm very proud of you, Wendy. I know Eric's been trying to get you to meditate for a while. We're so proud of you.
The funny thing is that his grandmother and I took a class in meditation back when I was in college. And I did it for a while and then just totally forgot about it. And now I realize that was really silly. I should have been doing this my whole life.
Yep.
Well, never too late.
Yep. Anyone else have practices that they are really enjoying doing?
I don't always enjoy meditating, but I do it every single day, regardless of how I feel. For the last, I guess, since the beginning of 2020, that kind of kicked in hardcore for me. I go for a walk almost every day because I have a lot of energy and I feel like I'm less crazy if I walk. And I can just sort of think through things. It's its own meditation. I started tapping about 6 months ago, like a emotional freedom technique. And I shared it with my son, and his sleep has been better and his overall mood is better. We do it together. And I journal every day. Those are my 4 kind of everydays.
Nice.
Awesome.
Yeah. Excellent. Yeah. EFT, if anyone is familiar with that, it's very helpful. And it's really easy. It's wonderful that you have your son doing it because it's so easy, like, duh.
Yeah. Repattering those neurons and habits. That's a big part of this process to say, okay, how can I disrupt my default? And so tapping has proven to be extremely effective at that. And similarly, meditation is an opportunity to disrupt our default, because when you're sitting there quietly with only our thoughts, we're forced to acknowledge the way that we speak to ourselves in our head. And oftentimes, the way that we speak to ourselves, we put all of this pressure and or blame or judgment on ourselves that we would never inflict on other people. And it's just our own soundtrack in our heads is a major source of stress. And so it's an opportunity to look at that and then to choose differently about how we want to think about it ourselves, talk to ourselves in our own mind. And I love, taking walks as well. That's one of our number one things. We, Rachel and I, make that a part of our daily routine. We eat lunch and then go for a walk. Allows us to kind of just appreciate each other and the beauty of where we live and life in general, and have a separation from the anxiety of everything that we're up to.
Yeah. Excellent. So is anyone else have any other techniques or anything else? Because EFT is a great one. Thank you for reminding us about that one, Judy. Anyone else have any other things that they are doing that help to alleviate stress with themselves, with their kids, whatever?
I really love yoga nidra practice. It's one of my favorites. I found a woman, if I could share the link somewhere, it'd be great, because this one woman, God, she is so calming. But it's an easy practice that once you learn it, you could just do it. You're basically just kind of going and focusing on different body parts. And yeah, that one's helpful. Sometimes I do write, or, just, yeah, like sometimes it's like, all right, time to get these thoughts out of my head, even the negative ones, get them out. Yeah. And sometimes I meditate. I find it easier to meditate after I do a little yoga or something, something to kind of like move the excess energy in the body, to be able to like, okay, I could sit down and be quiet a little more easily now. Yeah, and sometimes I fail at stress management and
We all
just
do.
project, or I for sure, like I was saying, thanks for the reminder about EFT. I'm just like, wow, yeah, because sometimes when you're in a triggered state, it's like, you're dealing with your child or something. It's not like you're like, oh, I'm gonna go sit down and meditate right now. It's kind of like you have to be a little bit more solution oriented in those like more heated moments. Yeah, breathing.
Yeah, something that helps me. Well, there's a few different ones, but there's a practice there's a woman, Janet Lansbury, especially for young kids. Like she teaches like this like very like calming, allowing like style of parenting that I feel have felt very supported in doing, so that I like can allow their big emotions and like not let that be my stress. Yeah. And I think that goes for everyone. Like, it's funny because I listen to her podcast and it's all about kids, but it's like, it's really all about people, like, and everyone, because everyone has big emotions, and like, we don't need to take that stress on, right? We don't need to take the stress of our child's emotions or our partner's emotions or our neighbor or coworker, whoever. Like, we don't need that. Like, that's not healthy for us. So yeah, that's one way that I feel supported in like, or trying to reduce stress, is like dealing with my child in a different way, or trying to like find solutions to deal with typical 3-year-old things in a different way. And the yoga nidra, oh my gosh, I do love the yoga nidra. We have a yoga nidra that we listen to every single night before bed. We've been doing it for like the past like month and a half, 2 months. And I like, granted, I still can't sleep, but that's just because I'm pregnant. But I feel infinitely more relaxed. And like, I think that it's actually weirdly dramatically shift Eric and I's mindsets over the past like 30 days too, because it's allowing like a lot of stress to be let go, and it's also allowing us to just be and let that mind space be. We also really love gratitude journaling and doing gratitudes. That's been really great. Another great one for if you have kids, your gratitude jar or anything like that. Easy to do. I personally like Eric's gonna laugh, but I like to get rid of things. I like to declutter as part of my stress reduction. So I'll clean out a closet and I'll suddenly feel better. But it does reduce stress. It's one of those things that reduces stress in your life, because having clutter around does actually cause it causes your brain to be processing things that it doesn't need to, or it causes your brain to be busy when it shouldn't be, or when it doesn't need to be. And it's kind of like the physical manifestation of meditation, in my opinion, to declutter. So that's another one. And then the last one that I'm going to mention is funny. It's sugar as something to alleviate stress. And Eric is going to get into it a little bit, can give us a little bit more detail about why sugar is so amazing, or why sugar is actually something to help de-stress in the long run. Take it away,
Yes.
Eric.
Thank you. Thank you, Rachel. Thank you, everybody, for sharing some of your tools. And yes, we're going to talk about what is really happening in the brain, right? So when we talk about stress and we look around, right, what we kind of collectively understand is that, like, one of the easiest ways to address anxiety and depression, it might not be the most effective, but in terms of Western medicine, this is what we have, right? We use selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, because serotonin is also a mediator of stress. So serotonin can quickly be kind of like, can overrun the brain during stress, and then eventually can burn out those receptors. And so one of the ways that we address that from a pharmacological standpoint is that we try to slow down the reuptake of the serotonin and keep that circulating more. So does that really address the underlying issue? Well, that's a whole nother question, right? Because the goal there is literally just to create a biochemical environment that feels less overwhelmed by stress. And the reality is that there's a lot of things that we do that can have a similar effect. And one of those things can be, if we're not effectively mitigating stress in other ways, it can be overindulging in sugar, right? Stress eating. That is another way to help increase serotonin and help mitigate some of the damaging effects of stress. But when used in a more balanced way with other methods of reducing the underlying sources of physiological stress, i.e. proper nutrition, sugar is extremely effective at reducing stress. In fact, it's so effective, we're hardwired for it. So for example, they did studies with babies who were under stressful circumstances or experiencing pain, and sugar dramatically reduced cortisol levels and other indicators of stress, even for babies, right, who are not reaching for the chocolate because of the pain of menstrual cramps and things like that. So these are innately hardwired into our physiology. So now it all starts to make sense, right? Why, oh man, everybody might be overindulging in sugar and then swing to the opposite, to completely deprive themselves of sugar as another coping mechanism, which forces them to find other ways to try to numb or quiet the stress that they're experiencing, right? So let's talk about PMS again. So during PMS, cellular respiration is reduced. And so that means breathing is somewhat suppressed. And then carbon dioxide levels, which are necessary for balancing the pH of the tissues, are also reduced. So let's put this into a context that most people understand, right? You've all seen like the cartoons or something where somebody's having a panic attack, right? Freaking out, and somebody grabs a bag for them and they start, right? Well, that's because carbon dioxide is an incredibly potent mitigator of stress. And they've done very thorough studies, research showing that people who have anxiety disorders, panic disorders, even other psychological disorders have reduced levels of carbon dioxide and other signs of reduced respiration in their tissues. Okay, so one of the easiest things we can do in general in this context is huffing in a paper bag. And what's also interesting is that what that does is that it will increase the acidity of specific tissues in the body, which would normally be acidified by lactic acid. And so most people know lactic acid. That's why you stop running. When you stop running, right, it starts hurting. But what we don't realize is that under stress, which can be from increased estrogen during menstruation or when pregnant, right, is that the carbon dioxide levels are lowered. So the body's ability to make carboxylic acid is shifted to now saying, oh, and I can't do that, so I'm going to make lactic acid instead. And lactic acid dissolves tissues, including bones. But when we have the carboxylic acid, because we're respirating properly, that provides the acidity to make healthy collagen and connective tissues. So, for example, if anybody's been making their own gelatin gummies, like we recommend, you'll know that we have to put some lemon juice in there to have the acidity to activate that connective, that binding property of the gelatin. It's the same thing in our bodies. Okay, so deep breathing is extremely critical to any healing process, and then once you feel healthy, to staying healthy. Okay, especially if we're doing any sort of breath holding. So this is why the Wim Hof method is so effective, and this is called the Bohr effect. The father of Niels Bohr was also a biochemical physicist, and he discovered that when high levels of carbon dioxide are present in the blood, it causes the hemoglobin in the red blood cells to release the oxygen so that it can go into the tissues. So if we're operating under a low CO2 condition, the blood cells are releasing less oxygen, and we're experiencing a mild form of hypoxia, which would definitely make it very difficult to think, right? If everybody's seen Apollo 13, remember when the oxygen levels were dropping and dropping and dropping? It got to that critical point where they could barely think and function, right? Same thing is happening inside of our bodies. And so when there's less CO2, and this may seem counterintuitive, right? But when there's less CO2, that means, again, more lactic acid. And that's going to create pain and fatigue and inflammation and the buildup of something called fibrosis, right? So this is when our joints and muscles start to get tight and creaky and feeling old, but that also builds up in our arteries and in our brains, in our nervous system, everywhere in our body. It's a process called fibrosis. And then what happens is the proteins in our bodies start to bond with aldehydes. So now many of you may be familiar, I've been talking about, like vitamin A and aldehydes now for a couple of years. This is a big part of where they come in. So now literally our bodies are combining with these toxic aldehydes, and it's becoming a part of our physiology. All right. So how do we counter this? Breathing, breath work. So one of the things that we do, again, is the gelatin. This is so critical to this whole process because that's going to suppress something called methionine. And increased methionine causes an imbalance with another type of amino acid called choline, and that speeds up the process of aging. So gelatin is the easiest thing besides breathing that we can do to help also mitigate this process and reduce the oxidative stress that's causing a lot of our symptoms and discomfort. Okay, so now where is this also applicable? Well, low carbon dioxide is also a product of hypothyroid dysfunction. Okay, so a lot of us trying to be healthy, trying to diet, things like that, eating lots and lots of broccoli and cruciferous vegetables and kale and all that stuff, are inadvertently also creating the conditions for lower carbon dioxide levels in our body. Okay, and then this leads to another process like I was talking about, the alkalosis, where we don't have enough acidity in the right places because of the lack of carbon dioxide. Okay, so now that is all inextricably linked to estrogen, excess estrogen dominance. And so this is where things like consuming good salts or baking soda or magnesium bicarbonate, potassium carbonate are so critical because those are going to cleave inside the body, create carbon dioxide, and give us bioavailable minerals. So when this alkalosis is happening, that's literally the dissolving of the collagen in the connective tissues. So it's the process of aging, right? We don't want our skin to be all saggy and droopy. We don't want our joints to be falling apart, so we need hip replacements. This is exactly what's happening, alkalosis. And we could be very easily preventing this if we just said, hey, everybody, okay, you're gonna have to go out there and wear a mask, because when you're at home by yourself, do some deep breathing, get a paper bag. Okay, so these are real solutions to mitigating the seemingly inescapable process of aging, because we are not properly addressing them, and we're not creating habits that actually lead to our bodies creating more strength, more resiliency. Okay, so what do? We do either the paper bag breathing, all right, so you can definitely do that in an emergency. But what I would suggest is getting in a daily habit of doing Wim Hof breathing. Wim Hof breathing is a little bit more controlled, less of an emergency type of a response, and it's very easy to do. So I'd like to invite everybody we're going to go through a round of Wim Hof breathing. I'm going to lead that. It's very simple. You can be doing this sitting wherever you are, or if you want to lay down on the floor, that's great. Okay, I just don't recommend doing this standing up in case you do get dizzy. All right. So once everybody's ready, all we're going to be doing is we're going to be breathing in fully, and we want to expand our bellies and expand our chests. And oftentimes that requires us to kind of like lift the chest and pull our shoulders back a little bit to really get a full inhale. And then when we exhale, just really let it go out on its own. Don't force it out. Okay. And we're going to do 20 deep, full breaths in and out. And then after the 20th breath, you're going to hold the top for just a moment, and then exhale maybe about halfway, and then hold your breath on the exhale. All right. And then I'll start a timer, and you just hold it as long as it feels comfortable. And then when you're ready to take a breath in, you want to take a deep breath in, hold that for 10 seconds, and then exhale and return to normal breathing. Okay. Now I use like the Wim Hof app on my phone, which has a timer, keeps track of my stats and all that kind of stuff. So that's really cool if you guys want to get into this, but I highly recommend doing this at least once a day. I like to do it usually first thing after I've had my morning adrenal tonic, and then I go into my workout routine. All right, so everybody understands how that works. Very simple. Now let's begin. So breathe in, and fully out. Fully in and fully out. And in, that 4, and out. And in for 5, and out. And in, and out. And 7, and out. And 8, and out. And 9, and out. And 10, and out. And 11, and out. And 12, and out. And 13, and out. Fully in, expand up into the chest, pull the shoulders back, and out. And 15, and out. And 16, and out. You might be feeling a little bit tingly, that's okay. And 18, and out. And 19, and out. And the last one, we're going to hold at the top, and 20 fully, all the way in, a little bit more, stop. Exhale just a little bit, let it go. and then stop. Hold it. Great. All right, so keep going, everybody. So now you might start to feel the blood coursing through your head. You might feel a little bit of tingling in your hands or your feet. That's totally fine. That's totally normal. Just check in with your heartbeat, and what you can start to consciously slow it down. Slow it down. Just stay calm. Stay relaxed. And when the timer gets to 1 minute, you can keep going if you'd like, but I'm going to stop at that point. Okay. Just focus on the heartbeat. Staying calm and great. That was 1 minute. So whenever you're ready, inhale, hold it for 10 seconds, wherever you're at. And then exhale and release. Just start breathing normally again. And this is normally done. We would usually do at least 3 rounds of this. And then I do 2 rounds with just the breathing and then relaxing. And then on the third one, instead of just holding my breath, he recommends to do an exercise like push-ups. And what's amazing is that I can do twice as many push-ups holding my breath after doing that breathing exercise than I can do if I was just exercising normally and breathing. So again, that's just showing how the carbon dioxide, right, helps mitigate and reduce the need for the lactic acid. So our bodies are able to function at a higher level and cope better with stress, both physiologically and mentally. Okay. Great. Good job, everybody. And now I'll pass it on to Rachel again.
Muted thing. How's everyone feeling? Good? A little tingly? When you do it, when you do the breathing exercise in like with 3 of them, you like sometimes your hands and feet get cold. It's can be a very intense experience, but it's great. So what with our coaching program, obviously we address all of these hormone issues, and we have the knowledge and we give you all of that information. So my question to you is what questions do you have about everything that Eric said? What do you need support in still in understanding the hormones of stress and how they relate to our reproductive hormones, all of that? Does anyone have any questions?
I have a question about your sugar recommendations.
Sure.
Yeah, like what do you guys do? Like what would you recommend? What is a healthy balance, or like your recommended sources for sugar?
Yeah. Well, so starting, within reason and focusing on fructose. So most people, if we have any issues with insulin resistance or poor insulin sensitivity, then, glucose from like starch. So if we eat starchy vegetables or things like that, that starch is going to be broken down directly into glucose. Okay, so as soon as we digest that, it's going to increase our blood sugar immediately. Versus fructose, which has to go to the liver so that the liver can cleave apart the 2 molecules. Okay, and that means that the liver is going to get some of that energy before it goes to your bloodstream. That's really, really important, especially if we're still trying to heal our metabolism. So that's a really great way to help mitigate some of the blood sugar spike. and make sure that that energy is getting to where it's really needed first, which is really the liver and the other detox organs. Okay. Then when we're still in this early process, we need to focus on making sure that we are always combining good sources of sugars with good sources of complete proteins. And when we do that together, we don't get the, the completely out of control blood sugar responses. And it helps to keep us feel more satiated and level our blood sugar longer. Okay. So easy ways to start are like, I'm drinking some green tea right now with honey. Okay. And if you're still very sensitive, you would just add some collagen to that, or maybe eat some gelatin gummies or some other sort of protein snack that you would have with that. Okay. And when we do that, over time, our body is learning, oh, this is a healthy way to regulate my blood sugar. I'm getting enough of what I need, so I don't need to resort to the stress response of cortisol, where if we're depriving ourselves of sugar or eating too much starchy things and not properly regulating our blood sugar, then it's going up and down. And every time it goes down, that's going to trigger cortisol. So for example, like keto diets, that is predicated on cortisol being required to trigger what's called gluconeogenesis. So the body has to make sugar if you don't give it any. But the same thing's happening even if we are eating sugar and it's just unregulated blood sugar up and down all the time. So we can also be inadvertently doing this if we just wait too long to eat, right? So intermittent fasting, or I got so caught up at work that I forgot to eat, right? That means blood sugar is going to drop, and then you're going to have an increase in stress hormones.
So on a practical level, this looks like eating a lot of fruit and fruit juices. And it looks like the primary sugar things that we use are honey and maple syrup, I would say, are our primary sugars. But we're not afraid of cane sugar. We do use cane sugar, and but you want to prioritize, especially at the very beginning, you want to prioritize the fruit and the honey and maple syrup as your main sugars. And because usually when you have cane sugar, it also comes with starch like flour or something like that. So that's on the practical level. That's what that looks like. Yeah.
So at the beginning, it might be like eating just, mostly fruit, or drinking teas and things like that. Or juices that are, fruit sweetened things, or honey, maple syrup with protein, right? With eggs or meat, until your digestion is stronger and you're feeling more leveled out. And then, like this morning, we had oatmeal with organic cane sugar and a little bit of maple syrup, and then I had soft boiled, or Milo and Rachel had hard-boiled eggs, right, to get extra protein. I always put a little bit of collagen protein in the oatmeal too. So that's just one great example. And if we're doing that consistently, then we're going to start to see an improvement in our overall metabolic strength, which means digestion will improve, and that our ability to maintain level blood sugar will improve.
Does that answer your question, Kristin? Excellent. Anyone else have any questions about specifics or in general things? Either one.
I've been doing the diet, for a while now. And should I still be having the collagen every morning in my tea?
Yes, no, or maybe. That at this point, right, like because you have been doing it for a long time, and this goes for everybody, right, is that once you get to a point where you are feeling good, it's up to you to start to figure out how to maintain that, or if there is a way to improve upon it, right? Because this is just the foundation to get you to the point where you are able to develop that self-awareness to say, oh, How does it feel when I have the collagen in the morning? How does it feel if I don't?
Okay,
Which
so
feels better?
just listen to your body, trial and error.
Yeah. Yeah,
Okay.
because, obviously collagen powder is not something that existed up until very recently. So, that tells me in my mind that it's not critical to health once we, fix a lot of the damage that was caused by other unnatural things that we've done to our bodies, right? So once we get to a point where we're really able to manage this most effectively just through diet and lifestyle.
But if you're lazy and you need protein with your sugars, it works great.
Yeah. There's nothing wrong with using it. And then you just have to figure out what works for you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sure.
Anyone else? We're getting close to the end, so want to make sure everyone has time to ask, but if there's nothing else, we might be towards the wrap up. Yep. Okay. All right. So, Eric, back to you.
Great. So hopefully that was helpful. I know I threw out a lot of big words in there. So, I just want to sum things up is that, yes, we need oxygen to live, and we also need carbon dioxide. And a lot of the problems that many people are experiencing with their health is related to the stress hormones and how they affect our body's ability to use carbon dioxide effectively. And so that's a critical piece of the puzzle. And if we properly address that right from the beginning, then we start to see rapid transformation and improvement in our health. And this is also a big part of that process of stepping into self-awareness and then eventually self-mastery. Right. So just like I was talking about for Wendy's question, is that she's now at the point where she is fully in self-awareness and developing that self-mastery. And so you get to experiment, right? What works for one person might work for another person, but doesn't mean they have to enjoy it. They might find something else that works just as well. And so this is all about each one of us taking responsibility for our own path and our own journey, and in fully developing our gifts that we have here to offer to the world, so that our bodies are no longer a limitation. So who do you want to be? What are your gifts that are being withheld from the rest of the world because of health? What can you do right now to start reducing your stress, to start to take control back from what seems to be an out of control world, and create habits and new patterns of thinking that support you in being, doing, and having everything that you want? So that's where we start. What is that vision? What does that look like for you? How will that allow you to show up in a bigger way in your life for your family, your friends, all the people that count on you to take a stand and be the change, be the example that so many people need right now, so we can get out of the cycle of victimhood and blame and into one where we can uphold and empower each other. Thanks everybody for joining us today. This recording will be on Facebook, and we'll also be sharing a link if you found this helpful, or you can always come back and look at it again. And we would invite you to also to share this with anybody else who needs to feel the love. And that's why we're here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Have a
Bye.
great day.